I'll call the October 24th, 2005 Committee of the Whole for the Champaign. No, it's not Urbana. I guess I got to remember what city I live in. The Urbana City Council to order. Would our clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Barnes, Mr. Bowersox,
Here.
Ms. Chenoweth, Mr. Lewis,
Here.
Mr. Roberts,
Here.
Mr. Smythe,
Here.
Ms. Stevenson,
Present.
Mayor Pressing.
Here.
Are there any additions to the agenda at this time? Okay, there don't seem to be any. Is there a staff report at this time?
I have nothing to report this evening.
It's all
Anybody
quiet.
else?
All quiet on the Eastern Front.
Oh, we had a busy weekend, that's for sure.
Yeah. Do you want to make any comments, or?
Only that Bill is going to review the signage on Brookwood Court. I got an email from one of you, I can't remember which one. We're going to take another look at the signage on Brookwood Court, but that's about it from that event. There were some follow-up actions that we are taking as a result of a fire call on an apartment building, but we started taking those actions today. But nothing further to report. We'll handle it.
Okay. Next item would be the approval of the minutes of our previous meeting.
So moved.
Okay, Charlie Smythe moves and Brandon Bowersox seconds. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes before we pass them? Okay, apparently they're in good shape. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the minutes are accepted. Is it time for opportunity for the public to speak if they wish to? We haven't, I don't believe, received any slips from the public. All right. How about, first I'm letting the public do it. Okay. Public, there doesn't seem to be any public input from the committee, or from the committee.
Yeah, just two real quick things. Remind people that leaf pickup has begun, and the next round of pickups, I believe, will begin next Monday on your regular recycling day. Item number 2 is for those in the adjoining the Lincoln Avenue area between roughly Oregon and Florida. There is a meeting at Leal School on Thursday, October 27th, beginning at 7 p.m. To discuss Lincoln Avenue plans.
I'm aware of a few things, too. I was invited to a band concert at the high school, Urbana High School. It's going to be tomorrow at 7, and I hope to make it, at least for part of it. And I wanted to bring to the attention of the city and our viewers and what I think is a significant thing. You may remember that 2 2.5 months ago, I suggested that the city might have consider a resolution concerning the appropriateness of Chief Alinowick as an image for the team at the University of Illinois. And the discussion of that was taken really to the Urbana Human Relations Commission as an appropriate agent to look into the question of the effect of the Alinowick and the Fighting Illini imagery and mascot as it might possibly affect the city and its residents, knowing that we have a city here that respects people, their race, and their cultures. And my concern was there an issue of discrimination involved in this? Well, the Human Relations Commission has decided to write a letter to the trustees restating their opinion, which had been originally stated in a letter to the trustees in 2000. 5 years have passed. They've decided that it might be time to speak again to the trustees. So I'm going to read their response briefly, and it is this. To the members of the Board of Trustees at the University of Illinois, dear members of the Board, In April 2000, the Urbana Human Relations Commission wrote to the Dialogue on the Chief Illiniwek to urge you to discontinue the use of Native American imagery that rouses conflict in our community. Despite 5 additional years of discussion and debate, the lack of resolution on this issue has resulted in increasing tensions surrounding the controversy, both on campus and in the community. The policies of the University of Illinois are not under our jurisdiction, but they significantly impact the well-being of our community. We will repeat here part of our letter of April 2000. The Urbana Human Relations Commission is charged with promoting and upholding the provisions of the Urbana Human Rights Ordinance, which exists to deal with matters of discrimination in our community, and to promote intergroup relations which develop respect for equal rights and which result in equal treatment without regard to race, color, sex, religion, national origin, ancestry, disability, or sexual orientation. That was a quote from the ordinance. The Commission is more generally charged with developing, quote, a means of anticipation and relief of community tensions that arise from racial, ethnic, religious, and social differences, end quote. So the letter continues, the high emotions around this issue, with the lack of leadership toward its resolution, have resulted in individuals and groups taking into their own hands advocating for or against maintaining Chief Illiniwek as a school mascot. Inflammatory billboards and activities of pro and anti-chief groups as part of Urbana civic celebrations make the issue an increasingly urgent one in need of resolution. The national attention to the issue around the rulings of the NCAA have spotlighted the issue and made it less defensible to allow such controversial imagery to dominate local energies and attentions. Our community urgently needs your leadership to resolve these tensions. The City of Urbana benefits greatly from the community of the university, its educational mission, and cultural vibrancy. Correspondingly, our community suffers when the issues at the university impact the human rights and relations of our citizens. We strongly urge you to use your power and leadership role to heal the damaging split in this community, to end all reference to Chief Illiniwek as part of the University of Illinois' identity and celebration. Signed, Marion Knight, Jr., who is the chair of the Urbana Human Relations Commission. And we received that in our packets, and I just thought it was significant. I'm sure that probably no further activity or response will be taken by the city, but I feel that it was important to comment that the Human Relations Commission has contacted the trustees on this issue. Moving to the agenda and the ordinances that are in it. First we have, there are only 3, so I'll just treat them separately. Ordinance number 2005-10-147, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance concerning landfill remediation costs 2006, and we're going to get a report from Bill Gray and a member of the Finance Department, I guess.
No, this is Rod Fletcher.
Rod, this is not the Finance Department. Not yet. Okay, then please take it away.
Much has occurred at the landfill site over the last 2-3 years, and that really updated in length activities that have been occurring at the landfill. So we thought we'd present this report number 9 to this evening. I'll do this in just a second and answer any questions that you may have. The action that we're requesting is for this to move for council consideration for budgeting for $220,000.
Okay, for many of the council members were not here, but 3 years ago we had a situation where we observed petroleum-based substance was seeping from the bank of an adjacent landfill unit to the saline ditch. And so we took a number of different steps to mitigate that. Once we advised EPA of the situation, they drafted a letter officially noting the violations. We subsequently hired a consultant to perform a site investigation, develop plans, and let bids for construction activities for the current landfill. Those activities really focus on two things. One, the Butso drainage ditch. We constructed a 5-foot tile in the ditch in order to cover some 50-year-old exposed refuse along the banks of the ditch. We also, at the saline ditch, where we had the petroleum-based substances seep into the saline, constructed a 500-foot long interceptor trench to cut it off and intercept that petroleum-based material from entering the ditch. And finally, we also observed some clear water seeps also emanating from the banks of landfill, and we have hired a consultant to evaluate and characterize those as requested by IPA. That report should be finished up here pretty shortly, and then we'll take that and discuss that matter with the local agency. But then specifically, when we constructed the interceptor trench, we were collecting contaminated leachate that's being generated in this particular area. And to date, we've collected about 400,000 gallons of material that needs to be treated and properly disposed of. This material has a number of volatile organic compound substances in it, and in order for us to treat that material locally at the sanitary district, we need to install an aeration system or a pre-treatment facility to volatilize off certain compounds down to a level that will be acceptable to the sanitary district. So we need to construct such a facility. It's a relatively small operation in terms of wastewater, but nonetheless, we need to construct this facility to aerate the materials so we can properly dispose of them. We will continue to collect these materials as a practical matter forever. Once this capital cost is done, we should see relatively minor operational costs of probably in the vicinity of $3,000 to $4,000 or $5,000 a year for maintenance and payments to the sanitary district. So tonight, as Bill suggested, we're coming before the council to request an amendment to the current budget.
I move we send or that we approve ordinance number 2005-10-147, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance landfill remediation costs 2006.
Second.
Okay, that motion has been made and seconded. Is there a discussion? Yes, Brandon.
Yeah, a few questions for you, Rod and Bill. First off, is there any opportunity to collaborate with the UCSD? They, have staff that are there 24 hours a day or monitoring from home and running the plant there, which is near the landfill, and they already have, a physical plant and factory and electrical connections and things. Are there any options, or maybe you've already looked into them, for locating some of these facilities actually on their land, or letting them run them, or us use their staff to help operate our piece of the facility? What are the opportunities for that collaboration?
Well, in fact, we are constructing this facility so they will be able to accept the material. They cannot, if we didn't have to build or construct a pretreatment facility, we would just take this material directly to their facility and let them process it, but we cannot do that given their current ordinance that requires certain values to be met before they can accept the material.
Just to add, the closest interceptor sanitary sewer is like 1,500 feet away from where we're talking about pumping. So we'll be installing a pipe to run to this sewer, but again, as Rod mentioned, we have to pre-treat this material, this leachate, prior to it being accepted by the district. And this is true for any industry within Champaign-Urbana. If you have a certain discharge and it exceeds their acceptable limits, then there are pre-treatment requirements, and we fall like in that type of category.
Okay.
But there's been a lot of interaction with us in the sanitary district to get where we are now, and believe me, if there was a way to just pipe it or dump it directly without this, we would, but we can't.
And is there any other possible outcome from the Clearwater SEEP investigation that it sounds like isn't quite complete, that might change or impact this facility and this amount of funding that we need?
I think the Clearwater SEEP issue is a separate issue that we hope to convince the EPA that it's I'll call it a benign item, but we have to make our case, and we'll just leave it at that.
And what's the sort of worst case scenario there? If it isn't benign, is there also treatment we would have to do or other remediation?
I think we'd be probably trying to get some experts beyond the experts that we have to try to make a strong case that it's what we think a harmful seep into the niche.
Okay.
But they're still
Harmless.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Quickie.
Yes, Louis. Robert.
The long-term ramifications you said would be this is maintained forever?
Right. This collection trench plans to be there in perpetuity, and its purpose is to intercept, this leachate from the landfill. So I don't see much changing.
Charlie.
Actually, which brings us to the need to plan on rebuilding this trench, how, every 50 years or 25 years, or any ideas?
I think the key is to watch for erosion. That's probably the key. I think if we keep the bank there, in good condition and not let it fall into, neglect and erosion, what have you, it should be there just like sewers are in the ground 100 or more years.
But there is a replacement at some point, and it'll
Absolutely.
have to be in somebody's
Even
cap.
the aeration equipment will have a certain life to it, so, right, there will have to be a VERF number assigned, if you will. It'll be long-term replacement, but there will be some upgrading, if you will, of a trench or of a air stripper.
Okay. Is this facility usable by anybody else if they were to tank, bring stuff in by tank? No. And where are the 400,000 gallons you've collected so far?
I'm sorry.
Where are the 400,000 gallons you've collected so far?
Most of them have been shipped up to Milwaukee for treatment up at a facility there. It wasn't until recently that we were able to construct if you will, an aeration system via our Public Works Department, which was successful enough to bring those values down. So in the last month, we've been taking that material to the sanitary district.
So actually there's a savings then by having our own long-term, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah, huge savings.
Okay.
And so it sounds like the facility is actually already in operation.
This is, if you will, maybe a temporary Band-Aid approach right now. So the facility we're looking at would be much more of a structure.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what are the options of shipping it to a processing center and not investing in a permanent, our own permanent facility? But I'm assuming that the shipping cost is going to outweigh the savings that we might have from making our own.
Correct. I mean, we were paying on.
It's 100 times cheaper.
Right.
It does sound like a savings then, doesn't it?
Good to me.
Yes. Mary?
Okay, you're asking for an increase in expenses. What about the decrease in your shipping costs?
The increase in expenses really is to pay for the capital construction of this. Our decreased costs would also be reflected in this budget amendment and in future budgets that will appear in operations and public works.
To be clear, we don't have any money technically budgeted anymore. This line item has been spent.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's not, what has been approved from previous council and previous budget approval, that money has essentially been spent in the two projects that we talked about already. So this is to allow us to build this new permanent facility and to, quite frankly, cover some costs that have been encumbered, or have been spent, I should say.
What was the shipping cost per year?
What was the shipping cost?
7,000 a month.
Advance?
7,000 a month?
We're paying $15,000 a month.
15,000 a month? Okay, thank you.
Wow. Any further questions?
I would just clarify that I think the motion is to forward it to council with a recommendation to approve it.
Right.
Yes, it would be.
Great.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, those prepared to forward this with an approval to council, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that ordinance, that motion
Thank you.
passes. Yeah. Okay. Item number 6 on the agenda, an ordinance number 2005-10-148, annual tax levy ordinance of the City of Urbana, Illinois, for the year beginning July 1st, 2005, and ending June 30th, 2006. And we have Ron to tell us a little bit about this.
Good evening. Actually, both the ordinance and the resolution that follows that go together in levying our property taxes. And the way they work is the ordinance sets sort of a ceiling or a maximum amount for the levy, and then the resolution authorizes the mayor, once in approximately the 1st of April, we will find out what the exact assessed value is, and it authorizes the mayor to reduce the levy amount down such that we get $1.31 in our levy rate. Because right now we don't know what that assessed value would be, so if we just levied a fixed dollar amount, the rate would vary, fluctuate, and our policy has been to keep that rate at $1.31. So that's how the ordinance and the resolution work. The levy ordinance and the resolution, as I mentioned, will levy a rate of $1.3120, which is the exact same rate we've had the last couple of years. I estimate that the owner of a home valued at $125,000 will pay to the city approximately 6% more, which is $34 than they paid last year. And what that does is reflect the value, on average, the increase in the value of their property. The total property tax revenue I estimate will go up 9.9%. The difference between the 6% and the 9.9, the 3.9% is new construction and annexation that's been developed in the city. And of course, we want to capture that in our property taxing for sure. I will mention a couple things about our rate. We have reduced our rate down from $1.49 to $1.31. That's about a 12% reduction in the city rate in the last 10 years. It's difficult in property tax for the city to have a major impact because we're only about 15% of that total property tax rate. The largest, of course, 55% is the school district. So it's tough for the city to either have a major impact either positively or negatively in the total tax rate and the tax bills. And both the city and those overlapping governments have worked hard in the last few years to lower that tax rate. It has decreased approximately 8% over the last 8 years, and the difference between the two cities has been decreasing over that same time frame. So with that, I answer any questions you might have.
Other questions? And maybe we should, well, yes, let's have a discussion, I guess.
Ron, just real quickly, remind me, what's the total of our budget? Is it 22 million?
The total city budget is about 33 to 34 million.
And this only represents about 20% then of our total budget.
That's about right.
Okay. So, yeah, I think people should understand that the majority of the money comes from sales tax, from communications tax, and
There's state income tax.
income
there's
tax, and-
fees and licenses. So the city is fortunate in that regard, that they do have a number of different revenues, and they often work sort of opposite each other. In other words, when property tax is up, many times income tax or the other revenues will be slightly down, and vice versa in different periods. So they do cycle through, which provides a lot of stability to the city, unlike the school district where most of their revenues are from the property tax.
Robert?
One follow-up question. And why did why do we pick the particular items? You've listed the general corporate fund, the police and firemen's pension fund, and the library as the items that this is being used to pay. It could be any $6.2 million out of the city, right, that could be plugged into here?
It could really be anything. Traditionally, we are supposed by law to levy for the firemen's and policemen's pension fund, although we could substitute that and just provide the money out of the general fund. The library, we could do that out of the general fund as well, but traditionally we have had a separate levy for the library. And I think they like that. They would like to see that for the library services on their property tax bill. And the other ones, I just picked one.
Thank you.
Other questions, Mayor?
When this levy comes in, it's next summer. So do you count it all in this current year's budget, even though the last part of it comes in August?
Yes, well, in effect, what we do is we recognize about 60% of it, which is traditionally under accounting principles, which is approximately what we collect. But for our budget purposes, I'm recognizing 100% of it in this current year. And that's one point I should have made about this levy that I forgot is really the time that these numbers were determined was really when you passed the budget in June. And that's when you looked at we looked at total revenues from all the city sources. We looked at the cost of the expenses and the services we were going to provide, tried to see if we could balance those out. If we can't balance those out, we either try to identify revenue sources or prioritize our expenses. And that's really when the proper time is, in my opinion, to discuss and debate the property tax levy. So we will be doing that again very shortly, unfortunately, coming up very quickly in the new budget. And, I don't know yet what the increase will be in the taxing values of the properties. I would expect that the breaks probably would begin to show up on those values sometime, because things are changing. Interest rates on mortgages are changing. They're going to change in the future. And I just don't expect that we're going to continue to have this type of 6% increase in the value of properties. I suppose it's nice when people are selling their homes, but it's probably not too nice when people have to pay the property taxes. So.
Robert?
As we go through this process, would it be possible for you to give us some information we can give our constituencies to communicate this a little clearer to them? Obviously, they have some misunderstandings about, what the tax levies are going to be and how it applies to them. I'm not sure exactly how to answer some of my emails. So if you could provide some of that, it would be helpful.
I'll help in any way I can. Any way I can. It is somewhat complex and somewhat confusing. And, when I provide percentages such as 6%, that I'm talking about an average across the city. I don't have any way, of course, knowing what individual properties are. Some will be below 6%, some will be above 6%, and of course, I always get the call of the person that's above the 6%. And but it is a complex thing, and certainly I'll help any way I can.
Brandon?
Yeah, I would also add, if I could, people can contact council members if they're concerned about generally the city's fiscal policies citywide, but if people have a concern about their individual tax bill, about some mistake, about whether they're getting the over 65 exemption that they're entitled to, or the owner-occupied exemption, all of that is spelled out on the tax bills that will come out again next year, and I really encourage people to call the number there for the assessor's office to help make sure they get walked through the process to make sure they're getting all the exemptions they're entitled to, because that's the way individually that people can really affect what they're paying and make sure it's fair for them.
Charlie?
I move that we send ordinance number 2005-10-148, the annual tax levy ordinance of the city, and resolution number 2005-10-02, a resolution directing the Champaign County Clerk to abate the tax levy for the tax year beginning July 1, 2005, to council with a recommendation for approval.
Second.
Okay, that motion's been provided and seconded, and there'd be time for discussion. I had one question I guess I wanted to ask. In your bullets on your explanation for the tax levy ordinance, the second bullet says, due to store closings, sales tax has increased by 1% per year over the past 3 years. And it sounded backwards to me. Could you explain what you're talking about there?
Well, I guess what I was trying to say, that sales tax has only increased 1% per year, which is significantly less than the cost of inflation and the cost of our expenses. In other words, if our expenses are going to go up 4 to 5% a year, our total revenues are going to have to go up 4 to 5% a year to stay in line. And anything below that is something that we have to make up. We have to make it up through property tax or income tax or some other revenue source. That's the point I was trying to make, that it is only gone up 1%. If it hadn't have been for those store closings, it probably would have gone up in that 4 to 5% range, because I think probably prices have that you and I pay at the stores have probably been going up in that 4 to 5% range.
Okay, I think the word only meant a lot to me on that one.
That's all right.
All right. Any other discussion yet? All right. We have a motion to approve ordinance number 2005-10-148 and the accompanying resolution 2005-10-020R. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed? Okay. The ordinance and the resolution are forwarded to City Council with recommendation for approval.